Welcome back. My name is Jana Parker, and I'm actually excited to announce that I have a new name for my business. It's called Mind by Design, and a new name for the podcast, which is called the Mind by Design podcast. So, welcome. This is Chris Bonfilio, and she is my first guest on my new show, Mind by Design. Welcome, Chris.
Hi, thanks for having me, Jana.
Absolutely. So, Chris has a very cool role. She has started a really interesting business, and it's called Connecting to Tutors. And I am, it kind of is very similar to what I really try to do with this podcast is connect the community to providers because as I'm sure you know, because this is now your field and what you're doing, it's so important to connect people to the right people who can help as quickly as possible. And it sounds like that's what connecting to tutors is all about. So, Chris, why don't you give us a little bit of a description of your company and what your mission is?
Sure. Okay, so I realize that parents may often be looking for a private tutor for their child, and that's exactly what I am here to do. I do an intake call with the family. I find out their needs for tutoring. I ask a lot of questions of them, strengths, interests, challenges in school, any learning differences, if any. And we talk about goals and scheduling and logistics, the whole piece that a parent would do with a tutor when they were making contact. But I take that off of their plate for them. I handle all of that. I have a great group of tutors that I work with. They're all very experienced. All college graduates, several years of tutoring at least, or teaching. Many have advanced degrees. There are quite a number who have teaching credentials as well. And then I find the best match according to everything that I have learned about the student. And we set that up and we arrange a Zoom call at everyone's convenience. Then part of my process after tutoring begins is I will do a check-in with the family after a couple of weeks of tutoring, and then I check in again in a little while after that. My goal is to have happy family and a parent that says, hey, this is a great match. So that's what I'm doing.
Awesome. That's great. And how did you get the idea to do this? Because I know you have kind of a long history in the field. So, yeah, how did you get into this?
So the last 10 years I spent as a director with a prominent local tutoring company. And I would say the majority of my tasks were to do intake calls with parents and to find out their needs. And it was quite in depth. And I developed a passion for doing that. A lot of people would say, "Oh, I don't know if I could do that," just listen but I did. I really listened with a lot of compassion, and I think I'm kind of a natural problem solver, or I try to be, and that meshed perfectly with this. And so I looked forward to it every time I did an intake call. I really did.
Yeah, yeah. I understand that a lot. And you also have another special little niche that you do with some student to school matching. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, I do. So I've had several parents ask me about schools, what would be appropriate for their child. I gave them a little bit of information I knew, and I thought, maybe this is a great need out there. And then I knew of another family who was moving to the area, to Silicon Valley, and they said, I have no idea how to go about selecting a school. So, what do you think? So that's what I have also begun doing too. is
Mhm.
helping gathering, information and having a conversation with a family. I'll do a brief intake to see, how far out they want to travel to take their child to school. And I will look at public schools and private schools for them.
Ah,
So,
great. That was going to be my next question. Yeah,
mhm.
so both public and private. Yeah, I get a lot of families asking, like which public school district is good or, which private school for different kinds of needs. And it's hard to know, and another thing about that is, you could say like, well, I've heard, this school is really good and that could be true, but it also could vary because even if the school is great teacher to teacher and the
Exactly.
fit with the teacher, that's tough, so having some help with that is really important.
Right, right. I spoke with a parent the other day, and she has a very young child, and I gave her some tips because I had taught in the public schools also and elementary, and I gave her some tips for elementary, and I said, you might want to follow this, 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 and this. See if you can visit the school, observe the teachers, knowing full well that you might have a great teacher or two for a couple of years, and then the next year maybe it's not as great, but overall you want a wonderful experience.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's great. So tell me a little bit about your background, besides just your work that you did for the past 10 years, but just a little bit about your history and teaching yourself.
Okay, yeah. I have a California life credential, elementary credential, and I taught for 10 years in the public schools in Monterey County. I taught second and third grade, a little bit of fourth, and I have some experience with some aspects of fifth grade. Um, and I loved it. I really did. Uh, uh, but then, for many reasons, I left education. I left the state for a while, and then I returned, and I thought still my passion was coming back to education. And I tutored for about 13 plus years. Um, was a director at another tutoring center as well for a short time, and then moved to my last position where I stayed for 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's great because it would be one thing if you had a business like this and you didn't have a teaching background, but the fact that you have so much of that experience yourself just makes you, in my eyes, very credible in terms of really understanding what it takes from, as you're listening to what a student has gone through, what a student really needs, and understanding the skill set of the tutor or teacher that you are matching with or the school.
Right, right. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Um, what have you found? What are things that you've seen parents be really concerned about right now? And what have you been concerned about as we've gone through this year and are just on the other side coming out of distance learning?
Right, right. Well, absolutely stress. Yeah, everybody, as you know too, is under an amazing amount of stress. Um, I think parents, now that it's looking like schools are going to be opening up, I think parents are beginning to focus more on, hey, my child has gaps in this area or that area, or reading or math or writing, and we're going to need a tutor. Like those gaps, but also the social and emotional loss is just huge. Um,
Yeah.
I I talk with friends and their children and grandchildren, and they're very concerned there. So I think for parents, staying positive as they can, trying to stay as organized as they can when they're helping their students, their kids, through their Zoom classes every day. I don't know how parents do it
I
actually.
know. I
Um,
know.
so that piece, the social and emotional growth, and is so challenging right now, and that stress piece, and that's where I'm hoping that my service that I can offer will take that particular piece of stress off of the parents' shoulders
Right.
and guide them, so that they can have that great tutor fit and not have to worry about that piece.
Yeah. One of the things that's been hard as I've been recommending different tutors and specialists to work with students that I work with is that so few people have been working in person over this year, and a couple have started back up, which is nice. And, I think that there is a lot to be said for providing services virtually. I know people have been extraordinarily successful and found a lot of great things with that, with continuing tutoring or therapy or coaching. There's so many things that can be done virtually, but sometimes that in-person tutor, especially for the academic work and tutoring, is so critical. It's critical for like touch points being in the classroom. So that's been really lacking for the kids. And then the tutoring, especially for kids who have like attention and executive function issues, or it takes so long to get, to kind of get your point across sometimes, or you can't like be right there to make a
Mhm.
correction or an adjustment and or teaching reading. I mean, so there are some things that have been really great and some things that have been really hard. And
Yes.
so what is your sense of, because I know you know a lot of tutors, about tutors really coming back? Because it's also been easier for people to not have to leave their home. So
Oh,
there's been a lot of
yeah.
pluses,
Mhm.
right? But what's your sense of people, feeling comfortable and coming back to in-person tutoring sessions?
Well, I've reached out to the tutors I work with and asked them, do you think you will go back in person when it's safe to do so, or with precautions in place? Um, right now, I haven't heard back from all of them, but I think right now I've probably had a 50-50
Mm,
response.
yeah.
And I think part of it is, it's more convenient that they don't have to travel. And on by the same token, there are some tutors who, when all of this COVID hit, they had to find other employment or, part-time jobs. And so um, they don't have the time to travel
Right.
to a student's home.
Right.
So, but I do eventually think it will get back to way more in person than I'm hoping it is right now.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I know as an elementary teacher and tutor, being there right there with the child is most important. That physical relationship is definitely necessary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I also just kind of want to go back to what you were saying about the social emotional piece, because that really is so important. And being, I know that there's a lot of fear around sending your kids back to school, and there's a lot of fear in kids about going back to school, like they've missed a lot of that. And a lot of them think like, well, I don't want to go back if I have to wear a mask. It's not going to be the same. But I'll tell you, my 10-year-old went back to school. And when I asked him, he only goes for like 2.5 hours a day right now. But, I said, how's school? And he was like, awesome. Like he was
Oh,
so
good.
happy. He was a little nervous, but he was so happy to be back. And I was like, well, how's recess? And he was like, it's great. We only get to play with our class, but it's okay. Like we still get to play on this and that. And, just for parents, I think really looking at the positives of going back rather than the fear. And also knowing that schools have been preparing for this all year. I
Mhm.
mean, and I work for 3 different school districts, and I'll say they are all prepared in all their different ways, and things look a little bit different for each school district, but I mean, they want more than anything for the kids to get back to school so they're not doing this in an unsafe way. So
Oh, no.
we've got
Mhm.
to kind of trust and get our kids back in school because
Exactly. Oh, yeah,
that's number one. And then number two is the tutor, right? But number one is the kids need to get back in school.
they do.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Oh, well, yeah. Go
one thing
ahead.
I'll say about the tutoring, um, online, is that one-on-one tutoring is more effective than a school classroom
Yeah,
online.
absolutely.
So parents need to be aware of that too. I mean, I'm sure,
Absolutely.
yeah,
I've actually even had, a lot of reading specialists in particular where I would have thought that it would have been really difficult to teach reading online. Some people have found quite a lot of success with, and some
I
people were
agree.
doing it online even before
Right.
we had to, and they found
Yes,
great
yes.
success. So it can work, and does oftentimes.
Right, right. And it also depends on the child. So I have, I know of a student who has quite some severe learning differences, and online has been tremendous for him,
Hmm.
much more than his in-person class.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
made progress. So,
Yeah, and kids, and on that same note, I know kids who have anxiety or kids who have autism. Kids who have and they're able to focus better online, and feel more comfortable in their environment and their surroundings because they don't have to deal with as much change or as much unknown. So it has worked quite well for a number of students that we wouldn't have necessarily anticipated.
right. Yeah. Yes.
Well, I want to also ask you this before I ask you how parent, when a parent would come to you. But first, I want to ask you, how do you find and vet your tutors, and is it, how do you have that connection? Because I think that's important.
Right.
And then how, if a tutor wanted to be part of your network, what would they do to get connected with you?
Sure. Yeah. Well, and to answer your last one first, tutors can reach out to me. What I look for is someone who's had at least 2 to 3 years of experience in tutoring or teaching, and then I'll take it from there. Um, the tutors I work with are tutors that I have worked with over the past number of years. So I know all of them, I know their personalities. So when I talk with a parent and the parent says, well, my child is, these are their personality traits. And then I'm always thinking in my head, oh, this person would be a good fit, or that person would be a good fit. So I do know their personalities and their teaching style and their success rate with the students. Um, Tutors can reach out to me by email. That's probably the best way, and then I would follow up with some information and schedule a phone chat with them and see if they would be a good fit for what I'm doing as well.
Mm-hmm. I can see that this would be really ideal for the tutor as well, because if a tutor, it's like me, like I'm managing my own business. It's been really hard because when you do intake calls and you try to determine if it's a good fit, like of course I want to be the one to talk to my potential clients because I want to know if it's a good fit, but at the same time it takes time to do that. It takes a couple email exchanges, then it takes a phone call to see, and this is kind of taking that aspect from a tutor who's really trying to focus on the work that they're doing with kids, and kind of allows for, you already know if it's good, if it's going to be a good fit. I mean, not 100%, but you have a pretty good idea, and it kind of takes that piece um, away, which is really nice for the tutor, I would think.
Right, right, right. Yeah. And I would share with the tutor everything that the family shared with me. So they have a great summary, pretty lengthy summary actually of the situation and the child, and they let me know if they would like to work with this child or not.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's really nice. So if a tutor wanted to reach out and become part of your network, they would just reach out to you and see if it's a good fit.
Reach out. Yeah,
Great. Awesome.
exactly. And I also wanted to say about the relationship when I speak with the family, my relationship is with the family. Um, uh, I do not receive any compensation from the tutor along the way. So, the family pays me, it's a flat fee for my service. And then I am just making that match, kind of like a broker.
Yeah, yeah. But usually a broker has like some,
They
some
get
back
fees.
end, they get paid,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So, yeah. So
Right.
what you're
I
saying is,
don't.
yeah. So this is really just, it's like when I'm making a referral to different people, it's the same thing. It's like, I feel like, I have a network of people that I know do different things. I continue to do these calls so that I can learn more about what everyone in this community does and who could potentially be a good fit for a student. And when I see someone and I've got to match them up, I don't get anything for doing that. I'm just trying to make a good
Exactly.
fit. And it sounds like you're doing the exact same thing. You are just trying to make a good fit. Yeah.
Yes.
Gosh, I feel honestly, like just as an aside, feels so nice to work with people who are really just trying to do the right thing and help kids,
Yeah.
and help families. Because I will say, like, for all of education's, downside or whatever, like, and all the things that we deal with education, it's hard in a lot of ways, but in a lot of ways, like, we're working with people who are just trying to
Right.
just trying to help,
Mhm.
and that feels good. It doesn't feel like we're not in real estate.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
I
thankful
think,
for that.
right, right. Yeah. We're not going to become wealthy in education, but you have to have a passion for
Right.
it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So if a family, when does a family come see you? When is that time and how do they do it?
Okay. So I would say that if they're hearing from their teacher, the child's teacher, that, your child needs a little supplemental support here in this area or that area, that's a good time. Also, parents oftentimes know it themselves because they're recognizing my child slipping in, his reading skills, writing, math, science, whatever it may be, and confidence, because that confidence piece, I think, goes first. And if they don't have that confidence, well, you know, that needs to be brought back and built up and strengthened. And, oftentimes a tutor also becomes a mentor for that child. And it's very important relationship right there. So I would say those are the times when they would contact me, and they can reach out by email or phone. I have both of those pieces on my website. And email is probably the best. And then I can send them some additional information and schedule a time to chat with them.
Yeah. And do you have any particular age group you work with?
Actually, kindergarten through grade 12 and sometimes beyond. Yeah.
Great.
I have
Awesome.
tutors who can, span that age group. I mean, not every tutor can do all that, but um, a number of tutors for to fit every age group.
Yeah. Awesome. And your website is connectingtotutors.com.
Correct.
All right. Great. As we wrap up here, are there any other just kind of like little tips or things that you would say to parents, little things that have come up this year, or just strategies as we go back into school? You named a few previously, but any kind of closing remarks, or even if they are just like thinking, is this time to, is it time to reach out to you, or, any words of wisdom, I guess.
Right. Words of wisdom. Okay. Um, well, one thing, I did mention about staying positive with the kids. Um, I know that especially with younger students, they sometimes say, "Oh, this is too hard. I can't do it. I'm not making any," they don't use these words necessarily, but "I'm not making any progress." If a parent can, but the parent knows there is some progress there. Um, to be able to say, "Do you remember when you couldn't read this chapter book, or you couldn't write that short essay, and look what you're doing now?" To be able to compare, bring, something from past times to the foreground and show them, see this progress. And that's amazing because a lot of times, and in fact, just short little clip. I had a student who I tutored for 2 or 3 years, and I happened to dig out of papers that I had, one of the first papers I worked with on him, and I brought it to our session as we were wrapping up he was outgrowing me with tutoring skills. So and I happened to show him this paper, and he said, "Who did that?" And I said, "You did that." And he said, "Really?" And I said, "Look where you are now." So, just bringing that to the forefront. Also, humor is amazing to use with kids, because if you can, bring something funny into your interaction with your child, get them to laugh, um, not sarcastically, but, true humor.
Yeah.
It makes some difficult situations a lot easier. One thing I would say to parents not to say to their student is, you just need to try harder, because sometimes they're trying as hard as they can, but the issue is not that. They actually need help. They need the skills. They need the concepts to fill in those gaps, or they need the skills to be able to improve their executive functioning, like you say.
Right.
Um, but most times they are trying as hard as they can.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, those are really, really good reminders for families. Yeah, and I love the staying positive and, the fear that families are feeling. Like if you talk about that in front of your kids too, or if you talk about like the worry and concern, they'll pick up on that, even if you don't think they're listening, they probably are, so staying positive with this situation and looking at the positive things about going back to school, about seeing their friends, about getting back to in-person instruction. I think those are all really important things that parents can do to help reinforce that for their kids.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Chris, I'm very excited for your business. I'm excited to use you.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and to send families your way because, yeah, I mean, as much work as I do to try to get to know anyone and everyone in this community who could help the students that I work with, I know that I don't know everybody, and it's so
Well, I don't
nice,
either.
but
So.
it's nice to know, it's really nice to know that if I have someone like just that you are a resource, and I think that it is extremely valuable. And you're just kind of taking what you've been doing and making it you're like a broker in a really positive kind of way, to
Right,
help
right.
families just really find that match. We're just we're so aligned with the importance of that. And yeah, I think it's really critical. So I love what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. So thanks for being here with me, and I'm sure we will talk soon.
Okay, great. Thanks a
Thank you.
lot.
Yeah.
All right. Bye-bye.